Hello, I'm Jim Miller. I'm here with Reggie Turner, Andy Overton, and Henry House. The Flip Side starts right now. Welcome to the show, and welcome, by the way, to Season 8 of The Flip Side. We've been doing this for 8 years now, Henry.
Wow.
How amazing is that? So we have a new senator. Reggie, what do you think?
That's who I expected. I expected Paul Quarterman to get the position, so congratulations to him. I think that in his position, he has some tough shoes to fill, especially with, the role that Senator Serafini played, the committee that he was on, the gravitas that he had in Annapolis. So those are some heavy shoes to fill. But I hope that Paul can do very good things for our community there.
Andy?
Yeah, and I think our eyes are on him. We need him to obviously do right by our community and do some great things. But I agree, Reggie, those are some tough shoes to fill. And frankly, I think that we're going to know a lot more in the next year about what he can accomplish and how that's going to look. So let's see what happens in 6, 8, 12 months.
Henry?
Well, I think Paul was an excellent choice for this. Not only does he have some tough shoes to fill in following Senator Serafini's, but also it's family. I mean, his father previously served down in Annapolis, and he was very well respected when he was down there, and I expect no less of Paul. I know him outside of the political arena. I think he's a fine gentleman, and his time that he served on the city council and the time that he served as a delegate, I think was very representative of working across the aisles and trying to get things done for all of Hagerstown and not just one political agenda.
So we live in a world today, at least, and this is an opinion, I'll preface this, where whether you're a D or an R can be a reason to exclude you from almost anything. I have seen amazing, crazy posts. If I find out you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, I'm going to unfriend you on Facebook. I just can't comprehend that situation. Yet here we sit talking about Andy Serafini, and there has been just accolades from all sides of the aisle. How is it that Andy can do this, but it escapes so many other politicians? What was different about Andy Serafini as an elected official because let me tell you something, Andy definitely has a political leaning. I think we can all agree on that. But again, he was loved on both sides of the aisle. How did that happen? Andy?
Andy? I know.
Tell us about Andy.
With an I. Well, I think when you put your electorate and your citizens above party, and that speaks a lot. I mean, if you're here for the good of the people, well, then that works. But also, I think that, at least in my mind, as the known Democrat here as well, if you don't violate the things that obviously we hold standardized, right, the big things, then I think you can work with anybody. I think there's always reaching across the aisle. And of course, we all have those standards, and the ones that are very high, the racism, the homophobia, if you don't violate those, there's no reason why you can't reach across the aisle and do what's right for the folks that elected you there and make sure that everybody's interests are at least heard. And that's what I think he did very, very well.
What do you say, Reggie?
I say his faith and his temperament, because he was always even keel, even when he was delivering tough information to you. Even when I first met Senator Serafini around 2014, and he was kind of explaining to me how some of the things went in Annapolis, and he wasn't delivering good news, and I didn't like it at the time, but he ended up being right, and his temperament and his faith always leads him, and I respect that from him.
Henry?
I think Senator Serafini, he looked at the big picture. He didn't let necessarily his emotions drive decisions. They were very thoughtful. And he would listen, even if you had an opposing viewpoint of him, he would listen to your viewpoint, and he would absorb it to help form whatever decision. And I think he did that in Annapolis. And that's the reason why he got appointed senator, is because he was able to work across the aisles, and he had the respect of both parties in Annapolis. And when 2/3 of Annapolis is a D, it's a huge climb for someone with an R beside their name to get the respect across the aisle.
Yeah. One other thing I would add on that is he brought a unique skill set to Annapolis. I believe he was the only financial advisor that was a part of the Senate. So from both sides of the aisle, he was leaned on for his financial expertise when it came to budgetary matters.
Interesting. That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
We probably need to find another financial advisor to run. What do you think, Andy?
I think that sounds like a fantastic idea.
So, in all seriousness, though, from my perspective, I think it boils down to me for mutual respect. I think that when I heard him disagree with those on the other side, he did it in a way that was respectful, and he didn't say, Henry, you're a Republican, you're an idiot. Andy, you're a Democrat, you're an idiot. He said, this is my position. Here are the reasons for my position, and hopefully fact-based. At least everything that I ever heard from him was fairly well fact-based. And I don't see him as someone who would try to spin something to meet his leanings. He reported it as he saw it and as he understood it. Again, the second part of that question is, why does that basic concept of human dignity and having fact-based discussions and mutual respect, why does that?
Because that was more of old school politics. And I look back to, we have a list of, people who have served, but I look back 10, 15 years ago, there was still a little bit more cooperation. And now we've become so bitter because, you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican. We can't get along. But that's not true. We agree on probably 90% of where we need to be. It's that other 10% that is dividing not just us, but the entire nation. And if we allow for the letter behind our name to interfere with our obligations to the constituents that are electing us, then we're not fulfilling, and Andy didn't allow that to step in his way.
Here's another question. Andy served on some pretty powerful committees. How will that all work? Will, obviously Paul's got some history there. Do we think he'll be able to continue in any of those committee involvements?
Well, Budget and Taxation is a very powerful committee. So to be a rookie senator, I'm not sure, that would be an option for him.
Okay. Yeah.
I think what they're going to do is they're going to, when Paul meets down there in the Senate with the president, he's going, what are your interests? And they're going to find things that he's comfortable that he can succeed at. And they'll shift someone else over to the Budget Committee. Who maybe has maybe Paul has stronger financial credentials than I'm aware of, but there may be someone in Annapolis who was nipping on Andy's heels to step in and can fill that role.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think you got to play to the strengths no matter what. As a very junior senator, you don't want somebody in a spot where they're going to fail or not have that expertise. And I'm sure Paul has many strengths, a few weaknesses. So play to the strengths. Allow him to work for us. Allow him to work his magic and what he's done in the appropriate areas. And I think that will happen. And they'll shift things over, just like you said, and hopefully it'll be balanced.
I see Paul, at least in my limited exposure to him, I see Paul as also one of these mutually respectful individuals. And if I had a looking glass, I would guess that he is going to gather the same level or at least significant level of across the aisle type of respect that Andy did. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's just a matter of, Paul being Paul.
Yeah.
And, I have not heard that he had any issues being a delegate down there. So I don't think that it should carry on to him being a senator.
Reggie, Andy?
I just think it's going to take time. It's going to take time for him to find his footing in the new role.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You've got to just see how that plays out first. Let's see what happens before we start postulating on whether it's going to work or not.
Okay. So I would be remiss if I didn't at least talk about all of the things that have happened that led us to where we are with Paul Quarterman being appointed to fill Andy Serafini's seat in the Senate. In 2015, the Washington County Republican Central Committee recommended Serafini to replace Chris Shank's Senate seat.
Right.
In 2015, they recommended Wyville to replace Serafini's
Who
delegate
was at that
seat.
point a county commissioner.
Right. Wyville was a county commissioner, and also in 2015 they recommended Woody Spong, there's a name, to replace Bill Wyville as county commissioner. So in 2015, the political chessboard resulted in the Washington County Republican Central Committee replacing, essentially making 3 appointments that were now not really voted on by the people. They were replacements. And I'm not suggesting the Washington County Republican Central Committee did anything wrong there. They played the hand they were dealt, which was they needed to replace these seats. In 2016, the Republican Central Committee locally recommends Wayne Kiefer to replace Woody Spong after Woody had a less than successful first couple of months in office and ended up resigning. In 2017, former Senator Don Munson, who was then a city council member, had health concerns and resigned, retired, whatever you want to call that. And the Hagerstown City Council appointed Shelley McIntyre, again, this is just 3 years ago, 2017, to replace retiring Don Munson. In 2018, the Republican Central Committee recommends Paul Quarterman to fill a delegate position.
And Paul was serving as?
A city council.
Yes.
Correct.
Thus opening up another seat, which Austin Heffernan was tagged to fill. And again, those seats were not filled by the Central Committee, Democrat or Republican. They were filled by the Hagerstown City Council in their process. Now in 2020, Andrew Serafini resigns, and we have Paul Quarterman to fill Andy's seat. And guess what? That leaves what?
That leaves a delegate spot.
Yeah,
That
right.
leaves a delegate spot open. So I guess my point is that seems to me to be an exceptional number of appointed rather than elected positions. And most of these folks have since gone on to be elected to their positions. But nonetheless, is that the way it's supposed to work?
Supposed to work or does work? I mean, that's, you could argue that those the Central Committee members were elected, and so they're elected to make the recommendations and to do their job.
That's
so
a very good
in
point.
a way, it is the
Is that the way we would
citizens.
hope it would work?
I mean, it's just the way that it is. I'm not, I think, an expert enough to say that it's good or it's bad. What I think I'm trying to say is, as long as the people are represented, then wonderful. And if you don't like the way that your Central Committee is working, then vote them out. And when the next round comes around, if you don't like who they put in there, call them and let them know and become involved. But right now, this is the process. This is the way that this works today.
But regardless of whether it's a Republican or Democrat Central Committee.
That's correct.
This is the way the process is handled.
That's correct.
So in our case, because there is a Republican governor, and we are a very conservative area and elect Republicans mostly to go down to Annapolis, they have the opportunity to appoint when, Chris Shank apparently got on the governor's radar and got appointed up, and that led to the dominoes there, et cetera, going down. So they're there to fulfill duty and fill in that slot. And if it would have been the Washington County Democratic Central Committee and we had a Democratic governor and it was a Democratic seat open, it would be the exact same thing.
Yeah, I agree. That's the process in which it works. And if we want to change that, then I suggest we start lobbying our representatives to change the process. But right now, that's where we are. And it's fair on, well, it's the same on each side.
It's the same on each side, and it does not have the expense of running a special election for a seat that is 2 years.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, if that's what it takes in order to get the right representative, in order to have the citizens vote, then you run the special election, money aside. But that's not the way it works here, period. If you want it changed, then change it.
Reggie, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's quite a farm system they've built here.
Farm system.
That's an interesting, yes, analogy.
That's our baseball analogy, right? But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's where we are right now.
And you know, back in 2015, there were other counties who were having the same challenges as the governor was appointing people and move them up the ladder. They were facing the same challenges, and the governor actually has the right of refusal.
That's right.
He can refuse to appoint someone that the local Central Committee has recommended.
Of course.
And so, which I think is kind of interesting in the timing of how this all took place. But, you know, I question the domino effect of, well, you have, you know, a Senate seat to fill. Well, you only limit it to your delegates to put their name in for the Senate seat.
Well, no, I don't think we limited it to that, but as it were.
This last one was. Only people who put their names in were the 3 delegates.
Interesting.
Neil Parrott opted out because he's running for Congress. Right. Okay, that left Delegate Weivel and Delegate Quarterman to put their name in. No one else could put their name in for the Senate. Okay, now because
Are we sure of that?
Yes, he is correct on that.
Yes, I'm positive.
But also you have to make sure that, you know, your governor is going to sign off on your choice. I think it would look poorly upon your central committee if, you know, the people that you put forward don't become
right.
Don't,
no, that's obvious.
So you have to play that game.
There's a lot of back channels.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't a simple process on a piece of paper.
You know, and I'm not saying that there's backroom collusion, but you know,
no.
Who is Hogan going to sign off on that we send down?
That's right.
Right.
Okay. So you have to view that, and I think, you know, either Weivel or Quarterman, since, you know, Delegate Parrott removed his name because he's running, you know, for Congress, I think he would have signed off on either one of them. But based upon that, the back channels, they flesh things out to figure out who's more going to be more tolerated, and you're also looking who's going to be able to hold that seat better at the next election.
That's right.
And you know, my concern with having Quarterman moved up was it's going to produce a really big challenge for the Republicans in the city of Hagerstown for the next election cycle.
That's right.
Okay, that's where my concern was. Do I think that Delegate Weivel or Delegate Quarterman, both of them were equally qualified based upon the criteria they set forward? But I just think that it produces another challenge and risk a seat that they probably would have won again by moving him up.
So city council elections are in November. If by chance, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, I don't have any evidence to suggest that it will, but if by chance we bring another city council person up to a delegate position, what does that do? How does that work?
Well, it opens up city council a bit.
Okay.
In regards to what the makeup of city council will be. I mean, that means that you're going to have at least 2 new city council persons.
So if that happened today, do we have a feel, and I don't, and I should know this, but do we have a feel when the delegate slot will be filled? Will that be filled prior to the election or after the election?
In the next 30 days.
In the next 30 days.
Okay.
They went on the clock.
Yeah, they went on the clock.
As soon as he accepted the Senate position.
They opened up the application process.
They opened up, okay. And the same thing as soon as Senator Serafini resigned, that started the time clock.
Yeah.
So all this is going to be done before the election.
So that is going to, if there were a city council person that were moved up to delegate position, if there was an acceptable candidate there, and just going through the city council in my head, I would think there might be. That's gonna then. So does the city council then? So 30 days from today, let's say, puts us at October 1st.
That's right.
Does the city council then fill that position for 30 days until the election?
Well, they'll have 30 days.
That's right.
And so then they'll put forward somebody, and then I guess the mayor has the option of when to schedule next city council meeting. They would schedule to be sworn in, and they may serve one
day.
meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. Or one day, depending on when meetings fall.
Wow.
But
That's pretty much a waste of an application process.
Well,
Especially if
for
that
city
person is
council.
not on the ballot.
Yeah.
yeah. But at the same, we should clarify the reason why we're talking city council, because the seat that is open and eligible is the city of Hagerstown delegate position.
Right.
Okay, so it's not, I live in the county, so I'm not eligible to put my name for it. So that's the city of Hagerstown. So anyone who is a Republican that's interested could put their name in, providing they meet the various criteria, which I think it just means you need to be a registered Republican voter. And
Living in the city.
living in the city.
That's right.
Okay.
If we're reading the tea leaves, we know the front runner is from city council.
Well, let's not read tea leaves. Let the process go through.
Well, that's
see
no fun.
But I
Let's
agree
see
with
who
you.
put their names
I
in.
agree with you.
Yeah, let's see what, yeah, true.
Let's
true.
see who puts their names in, because commuting to Annapolis and giving 90 days, which is actually probably more like 120 days, 4 months committed to being down in Annapolis, week long. That's a tough thing, and that's what Senator Serafini cited. It was difficult for him, having a business and having a family. So,
All right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see, and again, no suggestion that anybody did anything wrong, but I think the circumstances that our communities have had to endure with all of these chess moves, it's just interesting, in my view. Okay, up next, we're going to talk about a rediscovered cabin in the Jonathon Street community. We hope you'll stay with us for that story. Front page story, Baltimore Sun this past Sunday, titles this: "A Little Underdog, a rediscovered log cabin with a mysterious past in Hagerstown showcases a forgotten black community." Reggie, what say you?
I say that this is a huge deal for our community, for the city of Hagerstown, for the Jonathon Street community. To think that this was front page of the Baltimore Sun in the midst of political season, social unrest, and COVID is a pretty big deal. So this story is only going to get bigger. As you'll see from the article, I'm involved in this project. Terrence Moore and I co-founded the Western Maryland Community Development Corporation to start to work within the Jonathon Street community on this project and others. And this is starting to blossom, and there's a lot more to come.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, anytime we can highlight such incredible history in our town, especially in a very positive, awesome note, then I think it's amazing. And it's great that Baltimore can recognize Hagerstown for our historical perspectives.
Well, and does anybody remember the article?
Yes.
And it was in the Baltimore Magazine, not
Yes.
in the Sun.
2016.
That's right.
Yeah, I have it on my PC somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was not a flattering article about Hagerstown.
No, and whether it had truth to it or it did not, this has really the beginnings of something fantastic. And if it does, and when it does have legs, I think that people will finally understand that Hagerstown is good ground, and we've been good ground. And it's great to highlight that, and I can't wait to see what comes from it.
Wow, I love that thought process. Henry?
Reggie, did you grab your crowbar and start popping? Because they actually found this underneath, other siding. So are you going down Jonathon Street? Anything that might be a little, hey, this is a...
Actually, this home was known to be a log cabin.
Okay.
But was it?
Even though it was covered in siding,
Yeah.
it was known to be a log cabin. Many in the community, elders in the community knew that this was a log cabin. Obviously, the elderly homeowner, he knew that this was a log cabin underneath the siding. The city of Hagerstown did a preservation study of the Jonathon Street community in 2002. In that study, it was identified as a log cabin. So in my work through the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture and knowing about that study, I knew that this was a log cabin. But the unfortunate incident of the police officer hitting that home really exacerbated the matter. And once the siding was taken off, then the world began to know that it was a log cabin.
But you know what, Reggie? Yeah, exactly that. Now everyone knows that it's a log cabin.
So I know the talk is revitalizing and then working with Habitat to refresh up the house and then it's roughly 800 square feet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
it's
so
about 600. Preservation Maryland is going to add about 200 for a kitchen.
Okay, so revitalize it and get either a single or older couple in there that's not going to have family. That's because it's not 800 square feet is kind of small.
Yes.
At least from Hagerstown standards. Okay, so get that revitalized, and they'll work with Habitat, and they'll start paying back some of the expense of the refurb on that.
Yes.
Now, maybe I'm attributing the quote to somebody else. Talk about revitalizing the Jonathon Street corridor, and I think that's fantastic.
Right.
I think it's long overdue. Okay, and it's not just the current city council or the previous city council or anyone else. Okay, we can go back to, I remember when we used to have the prison down there. Things haven't changed. Okay, we have a lot of subsidized housing down there. People take pride in home ownership. Is there a way that we can try to get more homeowners down on Jonathon Street to take pride in what they have?
Absolutely, and that's a part of our mission. Because when you look at that community, that was an entrepreneurial community. Mm-hmm. And now it has been rezoned to be residential and there are no businesses there. So if you think from the early 1900s when this was an entrepreneurial business, when you had the Harmon Hotel and you had Ship's Tea Room, which were both Green Book sites in that community, none of those businesses survived that generation. They did not become generational businesses. And that speaks to wealth. So, I know we've talked before, but, there's a wealth gap in this country between whites and blacks, and that wealth gap is the average white family has wealth of about has a net worth of about $171,000. The average African American family has a net worth of about $17,000. And by 2053, African Americans are expected to have negative net worth.
And this is really going on a political tangent. If you don't want to go there, Jim, flag me. 50 years ago, what was the wealth disparity? I mean, right now you're saying the wealth disparity is about 5 to 1 or 6 to 1, white income versus black income.
It's more 10 to 1.
10 to 1.
10 to 1.
Okay. What was the disparity 50 years ago?
I'll have to look back at what that was, but I would venture to say, if we just want to stick to that community, that the amount of home ownership was higher. But part of what we were dealing with at that time was the redlining of that community. So that community never saw the property values that the counterparts in other parts of the city have seen.
So your statistic, is that for Hagerstown, or what is that?
When I talk about the wealth gap, that's a national statistic.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So if you look at a community like this, it's even worse. Because when you start to look at our poverty rates and things of that nature.
So we have people down there, let's say on Jonathon Street, average income for a household is 12 to 15,000. That would be worse than 17. Is that what you're estimating?
No, he's saying net worth.
Net worth. Okay.
So in other words, assets minus liabilities.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the goal of the project is to uplift the entire community. So the first thing that we've done is we've identified all the historic structures that are left. We lost one last year. We had a very contentious meeting with the city about a year and a half ago in regards to 335 North Jonathon Street that was owned by the Moxley Band. But we conceded on that home because it was too far gone after we had independent engineers come in and see that home. But we've identified the other historic homes in the community. And part of the message that we have in regards to rebuilding the community is that we have pre-COVID, we have over 300,000 people a year visiting to see Antietam battlefield. But when we start talking about the story and the contributions of African Americans, you can't tell that story without the Jonathon Street community. So we have a tourism angle. We have an opportunity to increase home ownership, to better the standards. We have an opportunity to revitalize the community center here, and also the MLK building that's down there.
Interesting. Well, you know, over time, Hagerstown has had a lot of firsts, and many of them positive. Wouldn't this be a nice feather in our cap if we could get this done? It
is quickly heading in that direction. I mean, if I can just give you the kind of the two things that are on the horizon. In the middle of September, the chief archaeologist for the State Highway Administration will be here doing an archaeological dig on the property. Along with that, there's going to be a study of the property done, because one of the other things we want to analyze is what was the effects of taking Route 11 away from the Jonathon Street community and moving it to Burhans. What effect did that have on the community as well? And then the second thing that's going to happen is that we recently negotiated with Three Roads Communications out of Frederick that has done some pretty high-profile documentaries, and they're looking to do a documentary on the Jonathon Street community as well.
Interesting. Other comments?
Oh no, that's perfect.
Okay. Well, again, my only comment is, as I said, if we could have this feather in a cap, I think it proves your point. This is good ground.
Hagerstown's good ground.
This is good
Absolutely.
ground. Okay. Up next, sometimes the truth hurts, says the producer of a video segment of Baltimore. We'll have that story when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Candidate for a Senate seat, Kim Klacik, produced a video about her community in Baltimore, and let's just say it's not very flattering to that community. Let's start with Henry. Henry, what say you?
Well, I was born from Baltimore, or born in Baltimore. I consider it my home city, even though I lived in Hagerstown for 40 plus years of my life. I saw the Inner Harbor when the Inner Harbor was not any place that you would want to go. And I saw all the money sunk in there. And you could go a couple blocks away and you would see conditions identical to what she's walking through in her commercial. And it's a commercial, that's what it is. It's highlighting the poor management and poor use of funds in the city of Baltimore. And I'm not going to say, oh, this is a party thing, which she did there. The city has a
Wait, you are or
I'm not.
You're
okay?
not saying.
Okay.
Gotcha.
The city has a fiduciary duty to make it the best environment, and we just were praising Hagerstown for what we had going on, okay, in the last segment. The city has a duty to their citizens to give them an environment that people feel safe to grow up in, that they have good education systems, that they have the opportunities that exist. People have abandoned Baltimore over the last 50 years. Because the city hasn't addressed those needs. And now we see murders on the increase, riots and protests that make national news. It's not a city that's safe that any of us at this table would want to bring our family up in. What needs to be addressed is the city issues. She's running for a national office. She is not running for the city of Baltimore as a mayor or as a council person. She's running for a national office. So she should be talking about what she can do to make this country better, and not specifically what she finds as the fault of the city of Baltimore. So
to summarize, you think the message is accurate, but not helpful towards her national campaign?
I don't think it serves her national campaign.
All right. Andy?
Yeah, it doesn't serve the citizens of Baltimore either. I mean, you've got folks running for city positions like Odette Ramos on the 14th, who won, like Tori Rose, who lost in the primary on the 7th. And their whole goal is not to point out, hey, Baltimore, we have problems, but to provide solutions. You know, God rest her soul, my grandmother always said, you bring me a problem, you bring me a solution. And her and Klacik's entire platform is problem, 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 with absolutely no plan to solve it. And if that's what we're running on in order to become an elected official, I worry about that. That's just simply, I'd like a title and to throw folks
you should
under the
send
bus.
a teletype to many of the people who are running for national office because they're citing everyone's problems and what the previous person didn't do to take care of things. And regardless of whether it's a Democrat or Republican, they're pointing to their predecessors and the mistakes they made.
Yeah, and that might be, but then bring me a solution. I think there's many different candidates who are bringing solutions. Whether I agree with the solutions or not, they have a plan. I see no plan here, none whatsoever. It's divisive. It's fear-mongering. It's let me take this part of Baltimore, the worst part of Baltimore, and show you and show you what you should be scared of. Instead of saying, I want to empower my citizens and empower my city to make this a better place, and let me show you how I will put my boots on the ground to make that happen. And there are city officials who have been elected who will do that.
Well,
and
not
that's
in
what
the city
she's
of
missing.
Baltimore because they have not been successful in the last 50 years.
Well, we can talk a whole lot about some of the corruption that has faced through there, but I tell you,
Okay, and where's the corruption stemming from?
Right, I hear you, and that's a whole different story than Klacik, obviously, and we can get into that topic. But the point is, bring me a solution and then let me hold your feet to the fire that if I elect you, that you're going to do this.
And how many candidates get elected that have provided a solution in their campaign, then they have unfulfilled campaign promises?
Well, but the reality is that, in my view, number one, all candidates make campaign promises. I agree with you 100%, by the way. I think you bring a problem, you bring a solution. I tell employees that every day. I tell my kids that every day. Don't just bring me a problem. Tell me what my options are. Let's collaborate and get this fixed. But all politicians are guilty of that. But the other thing that I think happens, especially with new politicians, is they overestimate their power to make changes. As a senator, you are one of 100. You cannot make sweeping changes to legislation, especially in an environment like we see today, where it's such a divisive environment at a national political level. From a congressman, it's even worse.
I believe she's running for Congress. I don't think she's running for Senate.
Okay, well, then it's even worse. So she's going to have less power. So I think, in my mind, having unfulfilled campaign promises for a newly elected candidate is inevitable because you overestimate the power that you have. Is that their fault? Maybe. But I would also say, relative to this video, I don't think the government can fix all these problems.
No.
And
You need the communities to want to fix the problems.
Yes, you do.
And you need to provide the infrastructure that they can succeed in fixing it.
And that's the part of the government, right? Is to bring the money and the infrastructure in order for the community to want to fix it as well. I mean, it goes far deeper than, I think, one conversation and one ad. But even if, my issue is not that she didn't actually bring any solutions, but that solutions aren't overnight, right? And plans don't happen in one congressional effort.
Well,
it has to
especially
start
when you're
laying
talking-
the foundation for that framework.
Amen.
And that is what I don't see in her campaign at all.
Well, and I'm not going to speak to her campaign because, quite frankly, I haven't been following it. But other than watching the video, which is, I don't think it does anything for her campaign.
Well, the one thing in regards to her campaign, I believe she is running for Senate because this is Elijah Cummings' old seat. Because she lost in a special election.
Elijah Cummings is not a senator, or was not a senator.
He was a representative.
Yes.
Representative.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is Elijah Cummings' seat. So she's running as representative, but she lost in a special election to Kwasi Mfume by close to 50 points.
Yeah.
I don't believe she's running for this seat. She's running for
Name recognition.
She's running for name recognition and a pathway within the party, because this video got her to be able to replace Candace Owens at the convention to have a speaking position.
And it's bolstering a war chest for when there is a real battle. Okay, I'm going to say it like I think it is that she's building up a war chest for when for probably something in the city of Baltimore that will be, I can do the change because the current mayor's not doing it. That's the possibility.
But let me give you a local analogy with what she did, right? Could a Democrat in this community put on red heels and walk through Jonathon Street and say the same thing about the Republican Party?
Oh, no. I don't think so.
Not successfully. I mean,
No,
sure,
not
I mean,
successfully.
They certainly can.
But they could do
Oh,
it
they
and
could.
paint the same case, right?
Yeah, they could, but I
Because-
don't think they'd be successful with it.
That's the point. She's not successful, but what I'm saying is everyone can point fingers, because, I looked
Well,
at
that's
this.
the easiest thing in the world to do.
Right.
Right.
I looked at this locally, like just from our standpoint, because, obviously the narrative is that Democrats have ran Baltimore for, what, 50 years?
Longer, but
Or longer there. I look back at our community, and since the passing of the Civil Rights Act, 7 out of 10 of our mayors have been Republican. So, someone could put on heels and put on that same show and talk about our community, and it's just the shoes on the other foot.
Yes, it is. That's a good point. And I would also say, and to your point about the infrastructure and the investment, if you look at, and I realize somebody will yell at me for saying there's more to Hagerstown than just the city center. But if you look at the planning, the help, the Maryland Theater project specifically, I mean, we have no idea at this point what that's going to reap for us in terms of benefits. But if I was a betting man, I would be all in on that one. And I think it only takes, and yes, we tried things and they didn't work. Okay, so we don't repeat the things that don't work, we try new things. And do we waste some money along the way? Yes, maybe we do. But if we all agree to something and we try it and it doesn't work and we go on to the next thing, I think that's a good thing. I think we learn from our failures. And I think that the Maryland Theater project specifically, USMH is another good example of something that has just gone beyond our expectations in terms of its ability. And I remember shooting videos of people that when BISFA was being built. And I remember people in the room saying, this will never work, this will never work, this is just ridiculous. And now it's one of the top high schools in the state, and now we have these kids graduating there, going to these amazing places for the next point in their learning adventures. And I think that projects like those demonstrate the fact that government has a role to play, but it has to be collaborative with the citizens who also want to see the change. I think some of the pop-up shops in Hagerstown that the downtown people have done here in recent years have been amazing. I know Rich Daughtridge was very involved in that. There's many things that we could point to. And no, we're not where we want to be, but as you said, it's not an overnight fix.
It's not.
But if we can continue to move the ball forward, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
And that's true.
And Baltimore didn't get this way in a day, and they're not going to get out of it.
Well, they haven't improved in 50 years.
And she's not going to. Then people are making the wrong decisions, and political officials should be held accountable for that. And guess what else?
Well,
people in the community should be held.
They become governors. That's what
responsible. People in the community should be held responsible for that as well. So, I'll take the last word on that one. All right. Up next, Fast Five. We'll return after these short messages. Welcome to Fast Five, where our 4 panelists talk about 5 topics in 7 short minutes. Let's get started. President Trump met with law enforcement in Kenosha. Reggie, what say you?
Kenosha's, Wisconsin's a battleground state, right?
Yes, it is.
So he was on message.
Okay. That's it? I really expected more from you on that.
I'll tee it up for these guys.
Okay. All right. Henry?
He hasn't gone to Oregon. You're going to say that's not a battleground state, right? That's pretty well assured to be one way. I think it's going to be interesting. As we go down, I don't think him showing up in Kenosha is going to win or lose him any votes. But I think the situation that we find ourselves in as a country, as American citizens, that we need to find some rational way to get. It's okay to protest, it's not okay to riot. Okay? If you're given instruction by a police officer to stop doing something, stop doing it and don't risk something going further. And I understand the black community is extremely scared because of past history and politicalization of a lot of what's going on out there, that they think they're targets. And that's not right. We have to give them some type of comfort out there. Trump going there, I don't think that does anything but for the little camera bit.
Circus.
No, it's a camera bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah, I think black people are scared because of the systematic racism that exists within the criminal justice system in our society. But yes, this was nothing more than to solidify his base and be able to rile up the people that need to be riled up within his own party and on his own side. It was a circus. And it was just something so that he can get in front of the cameras and do what he likes to do best, which is rile up people who are already going to vote for him.
Okay. Next topic. Amazon receives U.S. regulatory approval to start drone delivery trials. Does that make anyone else at this table nervous other than me? Reggie?
It makes me nervous. I guess the only thing that I'm comforted by, it's a short list of companies that have received that approval. But I'm just wondering, what's the regulatory piece going to look like in regards to kind of controlling that and the privacy issues that come from those drones?
So when you say privacy issues, the fact that they're probably going to videotape them delivering the package on your front stoop?
That and whatever footage that they keep and that goes back to the main base to be analyzed and watching our activities and routines.
Yeah.
And how will they try to monetize that information that they're using, that data they're collecting?
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, you know, I'm not worried about the privatization and about the pictures they're going to take. I got an email yesterday that showed my front stoop with an Amazon package and said it was delivered, and I thought, wow, that's crazy. I am worried about what they use that information for, and me not knowing about it. I don't know how this is going to pan out. I have no idea how many lawsuits are going to come from it, but it's not over, and it's certainly not a done deal. Again, I'll have to see what happens here, but let's see what they use my information for when they take pictures of the top of my roof.
The problem is how will you know what they use your information for?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the problem in my view.
Sure.
Well, that's one of the problems in my view. I could
Sure.
point to several others.
And a bit of a hypocrite on my side. I mean, I have an Alexa that I asked what the weather app was today. So, I mean, I buy into it at some point.
I don't have an Alexa, by the way, or
No,
any other
yeah.
voice-controlled devices that, other than, you know, the
Other
thing on my
than your
phone.
iPhone listening to us right now?
Right, exactly.
Sure.
Other than that one.
Yeah, right.
You had to bring that up,
I
didn't
did,
you? All right.
Well, I don't have an Alexa either. Okay.
You have an iPhone?
No, I won't own an Apple product, so that
But you own a phone that you
I
can...
do. Yeah, I can say, oh, Google, take me here.
Right.
Okay. So yes.
Google, they've never sold information.
No.
appropriately.
And you said about your rooftop. Well, just Google your address and you can look at your rooftop. You can look at the front of your house. You can see the numbers. Your license plates are blurred. Now, there's ways, if you're concerned about security, that you can block out your house from being able to be viewed, but they still can see your yard and everything else. So I'm not so concerned about this in as much as it's just the way things are going. What I'm seeing is a lot of Amazon trucks now doing a direct delivery, so they're bypassing critical, post service, UPS, FedEx, they're bypassing those services, so they're increasing their profit margin. I'm concerned about the ability of who's controlling these drones, okay? I mean, yeah, I think it would be fun to have a drone and fly over top,
Right.
and do stuff like that. That's pretty neat, but who's controlling the drones? Where are they controlling from? What if a wind gust happens and all of a sudden it decides to go in through your front window and...
That's the big one. Who's going to pay for that, right?
Okay, who's going to pay for it? Well, you ordered the package.
Yeah,
okay?
sure.
And, what's the way... Yeah, if you order a book off Amazon, is it going to be able to actually handle dropping that book off? Or are we talking about, are we a 5 pound, a 10 pound, a 50 pound? Where's the limit?
Sure.
So, I'd rather than put little rovers out there and set it down and just zoom it down your driveway and toss it up on the front step.
And also, who's going to be taking pot shots at a drone above their house? I mean, I see BB guns, and I don't know how this is really going to work out. Let's
Yeah,
just be
but it
honest.
might not be you. It probably is your neighbor.
Yeah, but I don't want them shooting at anything towards my house.
Yeah,
so, I mean, I'm just saying.
But what I'm saying is, pull.
Right.
Okay? And there goes that drone, and you can get a refund on your next day delivery.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. It's $6.
All right. Well, my computer has decided to die. What is our next topic?
Trump tariffs.
Okay, tariffs, coronavirus, but China's exports are up anyway. What say you, Andy?
I think they figured out how to sell to Americans who are in their house home improvement products. Read an article about the spa where they buy our lumber from the Pacific Northwest and they make a kit and send it to us, and that's still cheaper than us doing it ourselves. What it sounds like to me is that the tariffs aren't making a hell of a difference, and they're figuring out a way of what Europeans and what Americans want, and they're selling it to us, and we're buying it.
At an increased price.
Of course.
Right. Reggie?
I say that it looks like their bounce back from COVID is faster than most of the world.
Yeah.
They've gotten back to work sooner, and that's putting pressure on the rest of the world. That looks like, this article speaks to the rest of the world looking like they're in recession,
Right.
and they're moving forward.
Henry?
I would say we're outsourcing too much. Tariffs are not a tax on China. Tariffs are a tax on the U.S. citizen.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? It sounds great. Oh, I'm going to tax China 25%. Guess who's paying for that? We are.
Yeah.
Okay? That's my viewpoint on economics. Two, the services that we needed, they had already had up and going. Okay,
Right.
that's okay. Spas, yes, people are buying spas, and they're buying the wood from Canada, shipping it to China. They process it and send it back. A company that my son works with, they get engineering work, prototypes done in China because they can get it quicker and cheaper than sourcing it across the street. And there's a machine shop right across the street that can do it, but it's a lot quicker and it's a lot cheaper coming in. That makes you scratch your head. What are we doing wrong here?
Right.
Okay? There's something fundamentally that we've gotten away from manufacturing in this country, and part of it is the cost of labor, and we're not going to risk our lifestyle we'd rather buy it from China than to take a pay cut. Okay, I think we all agree we don't want to take a pay cut. So this is what we're playing into. China already had the medical devices there, they're making prescriptions, drugs there. All the other services are being made there. They were impacted, and plus they have they do not feel about the Chinese worker the way the U.S. feels about the American worker.
True. They're not on the same level. Right.
Okay,
Right.
they do
Right.
not take the effort for safety concerns,
Right.
for environmental concerns, work related. Oh, they have a great work ethic. They work 10, 12 hours a day. Well, fantastic. You know why they work 10 to 12 hours a day?
Because they're making $1.50 an hour.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, get them on par with everybody else.
And the
then
production goes down.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and at some level, we are. Yeah, I find it problematic, and a perfect example, and I don't remember how long ago this was, but I'm driving on Robinwood Drive towards Dual Highway, and in front of me is this Toyota truck, and on the back of the Toyota truck, do you know what the bumper sticker says? Buy American.
Toyotas are made in the U.S.
Regardless.
They're a Japanese company, but they're made in the U.S.
But there's some level of issue there. Yeah. All right. Next up, Amazon is doing more invasive kind of monitoring of their employees, and I don't know what all of the things they're monitoring are, and I imagine at some level, formal or informal, everyone monitors employees in terms of their output and so on and so forth. But at this point, Amazon has people worried because, wow, it's the unions are worried that it's invasive. Reggie, what say you?
And it looks like they want to limit unions as well. So it sounds like
they're moving things around to. Theoretically, we don't know that as a fact, but theoretically they could move things around to limit the union's ability to get in the door.
They're profiling employees.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like there's a battle brewing at Amazon.
But at the same point, he's giving competitive what would be union wages to his employees, comparable benefits to his employees. He's taking care of his employees without having the employees pay the dues of the union.
But is it all about wages?
To the worker, I think a lot was
No,
about
I don't
wages.
think
Working
that's the case.
conditions, his health care benefits, and I'm not saying that he isn't doing what a union would negotiate anyway, but I don't think it's right when an organization can tell me whether I can join a union or not. That's my choice.
Well, but you have that choice.
I do, but if you're preventing that information from coming through simply because you want to monitor my activity by using heat lamps and figuring when we're going to get together, that's an overstep. If you want to give me a drug test in order to make sure I can work the machinery, fine. You want to do a background check, I get it. But you don't get to tell me who I get to hang out with.
But
so I
aren't
can
they
talk about
monitoring
unions.
for the productivity and efficiency of
Are
your
they?
work? Are they not?
Right.
Well, we don't know.
But
the point is
that's
we
the
don't
whole
know.
thing. Is
and
that
that is the question. And
Right.
there's very little facts here. There's a lot of opinions about what they're doing, but yeah, at some point I have an issue with it. So, at any rate, we're being flagged that we're out of time, and I think that means we're out of time not only for this segment but for the entire show. So at the risk of cutting ourselves off, I will say that that's all the time we have for tonight. We hope you will like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us your comments and suggestions to feedback@flipsidetv.com. That's feedback@flipsidetv.com.